Jin is a passive character for the entire first half. So she's put in handcuffs 7 times in this movie. She just keeps getting captured.
7?
7 times she's put in cuffs. Captured over and over and over again.
Well, they're handcuffing the character, basically, literally.
Yeah, exactly. So what's happening is... Hello, movie friends. Welcome back to the show. Anthony here.
And James here. We're going to do some Star Wars today. We're going to talk about Rogue One, a Star Wars story. This was directed by Gareth Evans, written by Chris Weitz and Tony Gilroy. It came out in 2016. It was the first sort of spin-off, prequel, sequel, new Star Wars movie outside of the 9-film franchise that carries the main storyline. On Rotten Tomatoes, critics scored 84%, audience scored 86%. IMDb, it is a 7.8. Metacritic, it is 65%, and it made $1.05 billion at the goddamn box office. And it follows former scientist Galen Erso lives on a farm with his wife and young daughter Jin. His peaceful existence comes crashing down when the evil Orson Krennic takes him away from his beloved family. Many years later, Galen becomes the Empire's lead engineer for the most powerful weapon in the galaxy, the Death Star. Knowing that her father holds the key to its destruction, Jin joins forces with a spy and other resistance fighters to steal the space station's plans for the Rebel Alliance.
We haven't discussed Star Wars in a long time.
It's been a minute because, the last one we did, I think, was the prequel trilogy, right?
I think so, yeah.
That was a blast.
Ago,
it was such a good time. Now, when does Star Wars Rogue One, a Star Wars story, take place exactly? I'm going to tell you. So,
thanks, man.
Chronologically, it happens right before Star Wars Episode 4, Star Wars A New Hope, which was the first Star Wars movie ever released. So it takes place, obviously, right before the opening scene of that movie. The end scene of this film is the opening of that film. So basically, it's after Star Wars Episode 1, 2, 3. It's after the Clone Wars. It's after Solo Star Wars movie. It's after Star Wars Rebels, and then obviously it's before Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, Mandalorian, and the other trilogy.
And it was inspired by that. There's that one sentence in the opening scroll text of A New Hope where it says a band of rebels discovered a flaw in the Death Star, and that is what this whole movie is centered on. That storyline, who those people were, what that mission was, how they got the information for the Death Star that the Rebel Alliance used and allowed Luke Skywalker to blow the hell out of that Death Star in the first film.
Now, Lucasfilm visual effects legend John Knoll was the one who came up with this story. He pitched it to Kathleen Kennedy, who was the new president of Lucasfilm, and
right after the purchase,
and it went right into production because she loved it.
And Kathleen Kennedy has overseen the entire overhaul of all the Star Wars properties, all the television shows as well. She was leading Disney, but then with that purchase, she ended up overseeing Lucasfilm instead.
Including that, she's doing the Indiana Jones movie too, so she's overseeing that. Right now.
So Lucasfilm owns the Indiana Jones, so she's overseeing that as well. You're right, that's correct.
So she's working on that, and I enjoy Rogue One. It's not obviously the best Star Wars movie, but I put it, top 5 probably if I had to rank them all out, maybe top 6 or 7. I think it's a very solid addition to the Star Wars franchise. I think it feels really authentic to the original trilogy. It feels a lot like A New Hope. It feels like that tone and aesthetic. Less humor, obviously. It's darker, it's grittier, it's more serious because I think the whole goal of this film was not only plug holes with things that we wanted to see or we didn't hear much about in past Star Wars films. Obviously, as they said, the whole plot of A New Hope centers around these plans with the Death Star, but how did they get access and obtain the Death Star plans to find that vulnerability and weakness? This whole story is filling in that gap. So, obviously they're just making it up on the go as they went, but I still think it worked pretty well, and I enjoy the tone in general of it being dark, but I think aesthetically, I love it.
So the reason why we're calling this a debate is because this is a movie that James and I disagree about, one of the rare ones, whereas I think it's a good movie, but I do not think it's a great movie, and I think it's quite overrated, and we're going to discuss it in this episode. And I'm not saying it's a bad movie, and if you love this movie, I'm happy that you love it. It's if you're into it, so that's awesome. If you get something out of it, amazing. That's the whole point of watching movies. But for me, when I watch this movie, I've seen it a few times now, and I have never been very impressed with the writing. My problem with the film is its writing, and it's poor use of great actors, and especially the first half of the film. And I'll get into great details about what I have issues with. But the second half of the film is a lot better. But the first half of the film, I think, is honestly kind of a mess. But the film ends well. It has a very good ending. I think it ends perfectly and sets up its connection to the rest of the Star Wars story, the original film, very well. And I was totally satisfied when the film ended. But for an hour and a half, the first hour and a half watching this movie, I was just confused, frustrated, not impressed. Other than the production. The production is incredible. Production design, cinematography, the actors. It's an amazing cast of actors. Some really big stars, super talented actors in these roles. And I think the entire production team really did a fantastic job making the film. So got to give them credit where credit's due.
True. I respect that opinion. Production-wise, it is phenomenal. I mean, we have Greg Fraser as cinematographer, who just won his first Oscar. He obviously did The Batman. He did Dune, Star Wars Rogue One, as well as several other films. And Gareth Edwards, who directed this, started off as a visual effects creator and animator, and then made his own movie called Monsters, where he did the visual effects as well as directing. Then he made Godzilla, and then he got bumped up to do Rogue One, a Star Wars story. And I mean, it's quite the achievement to make that on basically your third film.
And Monsters was really good because the way he filmed it very low budget in a bunch of outdoor locations, and he did all the visual effects of the creature designs on his own. But the way he did that was he basically filmed it in a way where the monsters were generally in the background, a little with smoke covering them or mist covering them generally.
At night.
And also they were generally one long take of shots for each moment. So that way he only has to make one special effect as opposed to several if there are several cuts. So he approached that initial film he made in a very smart way, and that's why he was able to pull it off so successfully.
It's a really cool movie.
Yeah,
I
you should
believe
check it out.
It was on Amazon Prime for a while. I'm not sure if it's still on there now, but I definitely recommend checking it out. This film stars Felicity Jones as Jin Erso, Diego Luna as Cassie and Andor, Alan Tudyk as K2S0, Donnie Yen as Shrewd Imwe, Baze Malbus is played by Wen Jiang, Ben Mendelsohn is playing Orson Krennic, Forrest Whitaker as Saw Gerrera, Mads Mikkelsen as Galen Erso, and Riz Ahmed as Bodhi Rook. And that's basically the main cast of this film. Like Anthony said, tremendous talent here. Felicity Jones is a great actress, and I think she does a great job as a lead in this movie. She's got a lot of presence on screen. Then Diego Luna as the supporting actor in the role of Cassian Andor is also exceptional. And we all know how talented he is as well.
Yeah, they're a great pairing, and Felicity is extremely talented, multiple Oscar nominee, but she just does a terrific job as a strong lead character. And a great way to follow up Rey Skywalker in Force Awakens the year before.
Ben Mendelsohn's an excellent villain as Krennic in this movie because Krennic is an evil guy who's just looking after power and seeking power. And what's interesting about his character is even though we're presented to him thinking that he's a very high up guy, he ends up kind of just being a foot soldier to everyone else. I mean, when Tarkin comes into play, we realize that Krennic is much more inferior to him in general. He's much more inferior to Darth Vader when Vader chokes him out, and he's kind of just not as powerful as he thinks he is. He's got a lot of hubris and arrogance going on.
I love Ben Mendelsohn, and Krennic is an interesting character, but I just have to say, I watched this movie, and I'm gonna get into the negative.
Let's do it, man.
Again,
sorry,
I'm gonna get a lot of hate.
They can take it.
I'm ready for it.
They're really strong.
I believe in you all. I don't understand why you make this movie and you don't have Emperor Palpatine in this movie, and you don't have Darth Vader as your main antagonist. I like the idea of Krennic as, part of the army. He's probably an overseer of, and things like this, like building the Death Star. That I like, but making him the main villain of this film, I did not like that. Vader and Palpatine weren't the ones who were involved with the creation of the Death Star. Neither was Tarkin. I just found it strange that this kind of lowly soldier was the mastermind behind the Death Star, because the Death Star I always saw was the brainchild of the Emperor. He had been developing the super weapon, and Vader helped him create that, and then the Empire facilitated it with its resources and all of its people. And so when I watched this movie for the first time, I was like, wait, so Palpatine's not even going to be involved in any conversations about the Death Star, and Vader neither. Like, they're not even going to know about, like, not really be involved with it in any way other than Krennic is, like, overseeing the entire thing. And then Tarkin eventually takes credit from Krennic after he reveals that the functionality of the Death Star does work. And so I was just very underwhelmed that I understand they wanted to tease Vader, and I'm sure their intention was to save it for this great climactic ending. And the Vader scene is one of the strongest Star Wars scenes ever. But I just found it very underwhelming to have this movie centered on the Death Star and not even feature Palpatine and feature Darth Vader very minimally, even though it was like what I saw as their master plan of the original Star Wars trilogy.
I agree. I think the biggest weakness for the film would be characters. And when we finally see Vader for the first time, you know, he's taking that, he's got like his spa on Mustafar, sorry. Instead of like
steam room.
He's got a steam room.
It's a wooden steam room surrounded by bamboo.
No, he's doing a Cairo freeze.
The Wim Hof method. He's a big fan.
On Mustafar. When the first time we saw him, I was like, why are we only seeing him now?
Yeah.
I wish we could have
like
gotten
an hour and a
sooner.
half in.
Yeah. It's pretty far in, maybe like an hour in, where he has the conversation with Orson. What's his name? Krennic.
Doing great, man. I am destroying this debate right now. He can't even keep up with me. He's like overwhelmed.
I'm not overwhelmed at all. I said the name correctly. All right. So I was just making jokes, so I lost my train of thought. So Vader's taking his hot bath on Mustafar, and I'm just like, why isn't he in here sooner? It would have been great to have Vader as the main villain, but do you think that would have taken away from the impact of the final scene of the movie with him tearing everybody up, going to God mode in the hallway, finally seeing Vader that we've always wanted to see, the potential of what Lord Vader's like at his full potential at the height of his strength right before the beginning of A New Hope? Would it have taken away from that, or would it have supplemented the movie even more to have more Vader in it like that?
I think the more Vader, the better, and also it wouldn't have affected the impact of that final scene, because it's not like you didn't need to have him fighting or using his force powers too much in other scenes. And so when he does finally enter that moment and destroy and wreck that room of guys, I think it would still be very powerful, because we still wouldn't have seen that kind of action from him if he had been the heavily featured villain just through the story.
That's a good point, because in A New Hope, he doesn't even fight until Obi-Wan.
Exactly. He's considered one of the greatest villains of all time. He doesn't fight until that like end of the film, and it's like not even that great of a fight, honestly. So I think that the impact of that great hallway sequence would not have changed at all.
I think it's just a mistake that Star Wars and the current people who are running it have made, where they're protecting Vader, it seems like, and not wanting to show him off too much until now with the Obi-Wan show. We'll see how much Vader's actually in it, but they've always been like playing him close to the chest when you could have had him all over this movie.
Yeah.
It would have been really cool.
I think they overthink things, and they're always trying to keep fans on their toes. And you can say that's very much so in The Last Jedi, trying to show us things that trying to go away from our expectations. And so obviously they're like, okay, Vader has to be in this movie, but let's save him
just
for the
settle.
end, and let's just tease
Give him
him
one scene.
and then. But I just think that approach was just like kind of silly. Like it's the Death Star. Why is he not heavily featured as overseeing the entire project? It didn't make any sense.
They probably
to me.
didn't want people's heads to explode the entire time in the movie theater, but maybe they didn't want to be too repetitious of Star Wars: A New Hope and make it seem like it was the same movie.
I understand that, but I'm just saying, like, this was Palpatine's grand plan, you know, and
True.
He's not even in this movie. That's what also, like, I understand they wanted to make a new villain, but I mean, if you're gonna make a whole film that harkens back to the love of the original film, why are you eliminating some of the most memorable characters?
True, and I agree with that
And
point.
now they're embracing the old characters. I
Now-
think they learned from the mistake.
Now, before we continue, the best way to support Raiders of the Lost podcast, besides using our coupon codes, is to become a patron at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost podcast, where you get awesome perks like our podcast schedules, personalized videos, Patreon shoutouts on the show, weekly bonus episodes, and monthly Zoom calls and watch parties. All of our $10 and $25 tier patrons have access to our Discord And we interact with that every day, so you get to chat with us on there. You get to join us on our watch parties. We did an Oscars watch party with everyone on the Discord. It was super fun. We're going to do Shrek very soon. That was voted as the first movie to watch. We also launched our podcast Masterclass online course. So for anyone who wants to start a podcast or improve their current podcast, our 22-chapter 46 video lesson course will give you all the secrets behind the scenes of our show. The link is podcastmasterclass.teachable.com, or go to our website, raidersoftheLostPodcast.com. It's right there on the homepage. Check out all of our sources of content. Our merch, custom movie posters right there as well. Follow, subscribe wherever you're listening. Thanks so much for tuning in around the world. Now let's get back to Rogue One, a Star Wars story.
Now, like I said earlier, I don't have any problems with any of these actors. I think they're all excellent actors, but I just think that the weakness for me is the writing of this movie, like how we were just talking about how they approached who the villain is of this movie. And then when I watched this for the first time, I was a little overwhelmed from the first act of the film, figuring out who people were, what was going on, who the pilot was. It moved very quickly.
But how do you feel about the first scene? I think the first scene is very strong.
I think the first scene is great. I think it
got set up so well.
I think it's a visually very strong, excellent acting, and a great setup. I think it's a great setup for Jin's story. I think it's a terrific opening for the movie, and I think it was entertaining, intriguing, dramatic. It's like its own little mini movie. It has high stakes, and then a tragic conclusion of a father being separated from his family after watching his wife be killed from an old nemesis, and then Jin escaping with Saw. I thought it was a very strong opening.
All right, I think there's something we could agree on first before we get too deep into it.
Yeah.
Cinematography of this movie by Greg Fraser is exceptional. I love all of the shots in space are really terrific, and his use of light specifically in space is exceptional. You know, we have these great, massive destroyer ships, these huge ships that, you know, they were built to scale miniatures back in the day, but now they're kind of recreating those miniatures with CGI, and the detail is incredible. But one of my favorite things that Greg Fraser does with the cinematography, especially with the ships in outer space, and I think this kind of took all this aesthetically to a new level, are the light changes that he does, like when a sun's coming into view of a spaceship, or they were in the darkness and like a planet's moving out of orbit and showing
through shadow.
And then you see the ships that were just in complete darkness now getting engulfed by sunlight from a star, or like just you can see the ray of the sun like traveling instead of across like the land during a sunrise, it's traveling across a spaceship as it's moving in front of it. It's really incredible. I just think he just took everything to a new level, and the tone of this and aesthetically what he did with, and then what Bradford Young compounded on with Solo, that movie, they just really set the stage for the new Star Wars movies going forward.
Yeah, I think the visuals of this film are incredible. They're really remarkable, and Greg Fraser has proven himself to be one of the best cinematographers working today, and he deserved that Oscar he won. And I totally agree. Not only did the spaceships look really incredibly realistic for CGI, the way the light played with them in space was excellent, because the thing with the old films is they didn't have the technology to really change lighting and play around with how other surfaces in space would interact with the spaceships in terms of reflecting light, blocking light, creating shadows on them, and how they interacted with different stars as they came in and around other planets. So I think they got very creative with how they approach the spaceships, because it can kind of be boring imagery. We've all seen it now 100 times.
Perfect lighting.
And also because the ships are so gigantic, and then the frame has to be, if you're thinking about like logistically how far the camera is from a spaceship in space, it's hundreds, thousands and thousands of miles away. If you're thinking about like where would they place the camera to actually film that spaceship. So that means even though the spaceship is moving very fast, from our perspective, it's barely moving at all. So you have to make it visually interesting in a way.
And then to counter these epic space shots, these cosmic shots, whenever we're on the surface of a planet or on, a planet's crust with the people on the ground, it's very gritty, it's very realistic, lots of handheld shots, which I like, and I think it's a great counter to what they're doing in space.
There is a lot of natural lighting. He's used it in all of his films. Dune has a lot of natural lighting, just on site, on location.
The Batman has a ton too.
The Batman has a ton. So Greg Fraser loves shooting with natural daylight, they'll diffuse it sometimes, but oftentimes if you look behind the scenes, like they're not even diffusing or bouncing light. He's just like, let's just shoot it. If it's overcast, then then we have everything we need already.
And there were very few times where I thought the CGI didn't work. There's a lot of great moments where there's just subtle things here and there of like a creature, like where they're walking down these alleyways. There's like a little tentacle is hanging around. It's really cute. It works really well. But in general, I think the CGI was very good. And Tarkin, instead of casting somebody, they recreated him with animation. Now, how do you think they did recreating Governor Tarkin?
I don't think the technology was there yet. I think they might have rushed it and gotten ahead of themselves. I'm sure if that actor was still alive, they might have made him the main villain of this story. But I don't see why they couldn't have just recast the role. I'm not sure. I don't know if the family would have been offended by that. I don't see that as being offensive, just recasting a role. It's happened, I mean, countless times, recasting a role with a different actor. Ben Mendelsohn could have played Tarkin. I'm sure fans would have been fine with that. I mean, they would have understood, the guy passed away. I mean, there's no other way to fill the role. So I think that if Ben Mendelsohn had played Tarkin, it might have worked better for the story.
I think you're probably right. Right. And with the prosthetic work these days is exceptional. I mean,
give him a bigger nose
on top of what they did to Voldemort with Ralph Fiennes. That always looked excellent, and that was just a lot of animation on top of his face. And so maybe if Governor Tarkin was the lead villain of the film, it might have worked better. But the CGI, it's very good. However, I think it falls into the concept of uncanny valley, where that's the region of negative emotional response towards robots that seem almost human. Movement amplifies the emotional response, and in this phenomenon, people feel a sense of unease or even revulsion in response to humanoid robots or CGI recreations of humans.
That's exactly it, yeah.
That are highly realistic, meaning the better the CGI is, because as you can tell, this is pretty recent. At the time, it was phenomenal. It's not like Avatar where they're blue humanoids. These are humans being recreated. It's kind of the same thing happened with me in The Irishman, even though it's great, but the de-aging, there's something off about it. The CGI, the better it looks and the more real the characters look, the more weirded out humans get when watching it, basically.
Yeah, because it's photorealistic. Looking at it, like if you just freeze a frame, I'm sure it looks very good.
But you're like, there's something off.
When you see the movement, because there's so much subtlety in everyone as they speak and move and gestures, and there's so many idiosyncrasies our muscles make and our textures of our skin and hair and the way light bounces off of us. There's so much to it, and it's such a complex image to create. That's why Pixar has always kind of avoided making photorealistic humans, even though they can make photorealistic, physical objects, and they are improving so much, but still they'll make their humans cartoony looking, because making a photorealistic human out of CGI is extremely difficult, and it still I still don't see it being pulled off anytime soon. Caesar is the closest thing we've come to it, but Caesar being an ape, it's a lot easier for the audience to accept Caesar. And Caesar, even Caesar doesn't look perfect.
He's hybrid. He's a hybrid ape human with his muscle movements.
Exactly.
And facial movements.
So when Caesar speaks like a human, we kind of accept it, but it's still, we aren't at that point where, Luke Skywalker in Boba Fett is a perfect example of it looks photorealistic, but there's just that deadness behind the eyes and the movements of the mouth and the cheeks and the muscles. It just does not feel right. If you freeze the frame, it looks fine, but once you see the movement, you're like, that is not a human being.
It's really interesting. And it maybe will never get to the point where we fully accept it, even though maybe they can make it seem completely perfect and you can't tell the difference, but maybe they'll, like you just said, there'll be still the deadness in the eyes, there's no soul because it's not real.
Maybe we already are in the Matrix and we've already been fooled by it.
Maybe I'm just the only person that's in existence in my reality, and you're a projection. You're
just a simulation.
Or maybe you're a copy.
I'm a sim.
You're Agent Smith.
I am
part
inevitable.
Of you copied onto me.
Inevitable.
Something overwritten.
But I understand that they wanted to do that, but I feel like they put a lot of pressure on themselves to pull off the effect, and I feel like it would have been so much easier just to make Ben Mendelsohn Tarkin.
That would have probably been better.
Yeah.
Now, one more thing I think we can completely agree on, and then we'll get into the characters and plot and differences of opinion and stuff like that.
I can't wait to hear it.
Now, Michael Giacchino. The guy is amazing. Like you say all the time, he's like the closest thing modern world composers to John Williams in the film world, and he really did an incredible job with making a new Star Wars soundtrack and album, which I don't think anyone had done for a feature-length film before at this point. This is the first spin-off outside of the main storyline movies that John Williams does all the night.
Without the main themes.
Without the main themes, but he kind of really just made his own music that sounded so much like the world of Star Wars without sounding like a ripoff of John Williams.
And it's not that he rips off John Williams. That was already Michael Giacchino's style. He had been doing it. He makes music, and he approaches it in a similar way to John Williams.
They're both very jazzy as well as classical.
Yeah, they write very complex music with lots of instruments, lots of classical instruments. Like, they don't use digital effects. They don't like to use new instruments. They'll use the classical instruments from a full orchestra, and he likes a lot of the same things that John Williams likes to do. And so you can tell that he really is the next John Williams of our generation not because he's copying him, but it's just like, a blues player plays like another blues player. It's the style they approach music as, their voice, and I think he's the closest voice we've had to Williams, which makes him a perfect choice to score the first non-Skywalker Star Wars film, and he really did an excellent job. He's one of my favorite composers working today, and this is a very deep, complex, emotional, powerful, exciting score, and he really propels the movie and makes it better every moment.
Great. Now, we talked about one character. How about we'll run through the characters real quick, set them up, and then we can talk about everything we disagree about in the movie.
Then we'll get to the debate.
So, Felicity Jones plays Jin Erso.
Jin Erso.
Now, Jin Erso is the daughter of Galen Erso, who is played by Mads Mikkelsen, and Mads Mikkelsen's character is a genius engineer who basically gets kidnapped and forced to work on the Death Star and completes the Death Star. Unbeknownst to the Empire, he put that secret vulnerability inside the Death Star plans and in the Death Star that he's trying to send the message to Jin, who doesn't know what's happening because she's just grown up without her father after watching her mother be killed in front of her while she was trying to hide from the Empire and the soldiers. And then she basically spends her teenage years in adulthood running in prison, and she's in an Imperial worker camp. She's focused on self-preservation. She even attacks her rescuers, and the droid goes, "Congratulations, you are being rescued." And she believes that her father has, basically joined the Empire and is working for them and is going to lead them to destruction of other planets. And the thing with Jin is she has so much potential as a leader and a great person, but she's too busy just worrying about herself, trying to survive, worrying only about her needs that fits her and that helps her get further in life and, stay hidden.
Great point. Next, we have Cassie and Andor, played by Diego Luna. Ooh, hold on, my Gamora fell down. Gotta fix her. And Diego was a welcome introduction to the Star Wars world, and he's getting his own spin-off show of this character.
So they're going back.
Yeah, they're going backwards in time.
We all know that, at the end of this movie, big spoiler alert, everybody dies.
But he's a scene stealer. He's a great actor, and Cassian is a member of the rebellion, and he's been a rebel since he was 6, and he is extremely committed to the cause, probably just as much as Jin by the end of the film. I think they have a lot in common in that retrospect by being some of the only rebels who actually want to continue fighting rather than giving into the Empire. And Cassian proves himself to be completely committed to the cause by, we see his first introductory scene. We see him murder a friend of his at the cost of preventing anyone from figuring out the secret that his friend knows. So to protect the rebellion, he's willing to kill even an innocent life, and that shows his commitment to everything.
Also, it shows the extremism of the rebellion, how Cassian, like many others, will do anything for the cause. And, that's a concept I like about this film because the rebellion's always perceived as perfect and innocent and good and always doing the right thing, whereas this kind of blurs the lines of both extremes of the Empire and the rebellion and makes them seem a little more similar because both sides are doing terrible things. Obviously, the rebellion's not blowing up planets, but Cassian killing an innocent person to preserve the information that his friend knows from getting to the Empire, for him, that's a necessary elimination of a human life that he has to take out with, and it's sad, but that shows the extremism of both ends.
And then we have K2SO, who is a hilarious droid, much needed breath of fresh air and levity in this film, played by Alan Tudyk, who's the Steve the Pirate in Dodgeball.
Wait, there's a pirate on our team?
Yar, Peter. Yar, Peter.
Who am I going to share all this gold with?
Wait, there's a guy on our team dressed like a pirate? But he's great in this film. I think there's been like this new cliche of modern Star Wars movies of the droids being like hilarious scene stealers. Because, C-3PO was always funny. R2-D2 was always a scene stealer. But I think they've really upped the ante with the droids in the modern films.
Now, K2SO is a reprogrammed Imperial droid, so he can kind of help them infiltrate some areas like that happens in the film.
Yeah,
Like Eddie
very
says,
funny, yeah.
It's very sassy, hilarious. He's also super blunt and honest all the time, which is always funny to hear because it's just like they don't want to hear the information he's telling them.
He's good with his calculations.
Not always. I mean, they do like make it further.
Oh, yeah. They're
He's like, we will make it 33% into our mission. They make it like they finish the mission, but they all do die.
Yeah.
And then Saw Gerrera, played by Forrest Whitaker, is an extremist rebel. He's kind of created his own rebellion aside from the other rebellion, the alliance that the other leaders are a part of. Similar to General Grievous, Saw Gerrera has become more machine than man, you can argue. He's only kept alive by his respirator. He has mechanical body parts and limbs. So it's really an interesting blend of Vader and I think General Grievous with this character, Saw Gerrera. His morality is ambiguous, even though he is a rebel against the Empire. You can tell he does operate on maybe less of a moral line than the other part of the rebellion. And Saw Gerrera was the person who took Jin in as a child.
And he seems to be slipping into madness the way Forrest plays it. He's very like on the edge and seems to have lost a lot of his own humanity because he's willing to do terrible things to get what he wants.
And it seems like that's why he's willing to just let himself die when Jedha is being blown up. He's like, because he says that line to Jin. He says, I almost have nothing left. So there's like, maybe you could say all of his morality is gone. Why you're like laughing?
No, you want to know why I think that he died?
Why?
Because I think the writers didn't know what to do with him for the rest of the movie.
Well, it's not as bad as Uncharted when the main girl just disappears for the entire third act. I was watching, I'm like, wait, where's she?
So now, since we're on him, it's not that long of a discussion, but the fact that he just like was like, Jin's like, come on, we can make it. He's like, nah, kid, I'm staying here.
Nah, son.
Nah.
I'm all right.
I'm tired, man. I was like, bro, all you have to do is walk to that ship and you're done. You're fine.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, and it seems kind of pointless of him keeping himself alive with all these mechanical operational
What's
parts.
The motivation of survival, and then now death's upon him, and he's like, you know what? Forget all this effort I put into retaining my life.
Maybe you could argue that now that Jin's here, he can see that maybe his part of the rebellion, what he's doing, isn't working, and now Jin seems to be taking up the mantle for him in a more righteous way of a rebellion, in that now that she's here to be a leader for everybody else, it's okay for him to go.
I mean, I suppose so, but it's by this point she hasn't shown much leadership. She's just like there along for the ride. The entire point of her being there was just because she's a familiar face. So it's not like she's leading this crew yet. You know what I mean? So I honestly think, writers it's complex making a big movie like this, and you put yourself into holes and you get to like bust through a door sometimes. And I think that my interpretation is like the writers didn't know what to do with Forrest Whitaker's character, and it's Felicity Jones's movie and Diego Luna's movie, and so they're just like, how do we cut him out? We don't have a place for him really in the third act.
We really need to blow Jedha up.
Yeah, and we got to blow Jedha up. So what's the best way to not have him anymore in the movie? Let's just have him allow himself to just like not want to run from death. That was how I interpret it.
I think you're probably right. But I think they hid that with the dialogue I brought up.
Yeah. No, yeah, they hid it well.
Yeah,
but keep in mind, these are written by committee, by a lot of people.
And it's Disney.
It's like they have to hit certain beats and they have to accomplish certain things. And you're kind of limited in terms of what you can do. So you have to like dance around circles, essentially. This week, we are once again
.com, the home of pop culture. And then we have Bodhi Rock, played by Riz Ahmed. Congratulations to Riz Ahmed for just winning an Oscar for Best Short Film.
First Muslim to win an Oscar.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Really? That's incredible. So he plays, again, Bodhi Rook, and he is a cargo pilot who has escaped. It's kind of like Finn in Force Awakens. It says he's defected and he needs to speak to Saw Gerrera. That's his motivation. That's how he comes into contact with Jin and Diego when they're imprisoned in that chamber all together, and he's the pilot.
This was my first exposure to Riz Ahmed, I believe. I don't think I'd seen him in anything before this.
Nightcrawler.
Nightcrawler came out, I think, after this.
Are you sure?
Maybe. It's
I
possible.
believe Nightcrawler was the same year or the year before.
could have been the same year.
Let me check. You keep talking
Double
about
check
stuff.
it.
Keep
But I
talking
mean,
about stuff.
but I bet Bodhi is named after Bodhi from, what's it called? Keanu and Patrick Swayze.
Oh, you don't remember the name of this
Come on,
movie?
man. Don't.
Come on, it's a classic. Should we let him squirm, everybody?
I'm not squirming.
Ooh, I was so right. Nightcrawler came out in 2014.
Wow, that's that old of a movie?
Yeah, man.
What?
Dan Gilroy, 2014, October.
Oh, my
2
God.
years before this.
Well, Dan Gilroy wrote this, so that makes sense.
You're thinking of Point Break, the classic
Break.
by Catherine Bigelow.
Point Break.
I am an FBI agent.
I can't describe what I'm feeling.
Anyways, continue.
But Bodhi is actually another aspect to the script that I don't like. Do you want me to get into it now, or do you want to get into
We're
it
on
later?
him. Let's do it.
Okay, so with Bodhi, the first time I saw this film, I was confused about like who the pilot was, what all these people kept talking about as a pilot, and I was just like, wait, is he the pilot? Like, what did the pilot had information, or he was friends with Galen, and like I was like, what is going on? Because what happened was this movie has a lot of exposition. This movie, the reason why I don't like the writing is they're all about tell, don't show in this movie, and great filmmaking is about show, don't tell.
Yeah, Anthony hates tell, don't show.
You hate it too.
Sometimes it's fine if it works, but not always.
So show, don't tell means you show information using action, and as opposed to characters just telling you information just offhand. And this movie has a lot of characters just explaining things, and so with Bodhi, I was confused the first time I saw it that he was the pilot, and the reason why I was confused because there's like literally our introduction to Bodhi is 15 seconds where he's a prisoner of these guys, and they're like he's like I'm defecting, and they're like here's the defector, and they take him away.
Because he's trying to bring them the information because
exactly.
he has the holographic message that was recorded by Galen to be sent to Guerrera on Jeddah.
Exactly. So, but I was confused that because, like, I feel like this movie, they should have showed his story. They should have showed Bodhi defecting. They should have showed, like, maybe he crash landed or how these guys captured him. It would have given a better sense of who he was, as opposed to just having literally a 15-second shot of he's the defector.
Hey man, we got time. We got to move.
Well, so that's an issue with the film. So within 6 minutes, we're introduced to 4 characters. We're bounced around 4 planets, and we don't really have any time to breathe with these characters. We don't really have any time to like understand who these people are, what's driving them, how they got here, what their motivations are, what any characteristics are, and the movie kind of makes up for this by having like every character in the film mention the pilot. Like literally every character is like, oh, I heard you have a rumor about a pilot. Oh, there's a pilot, and they wouldn't have had to do that if they had shown Riz Ahmed was the pilot. I found it pretty confusing because the entire plot revolves around this. It revolves around Bodhi and his objective and his plan with Galen. And also with Bodhi, I was very confused about the alien that Saw Gerrera had like torture him for information.
Yeah.
Because first of all, Saw said, "Okay, when this monster has its way with you, you go insane." And so you're like when the tentacles wrap around him, you're like, "Oh my God, he's gonna become mad and lose his mind afterwards." And then like 5 minutes later, like he's fine, like nothing happened to him from interacting with the alien. And then also, the whole point of that entire sequence is kind of pointless because the point of using the alien to interrogate Bodhi was to find out if he's lying or not about being the pilot and having the hologram from Galen. And because Saw doesn't believe him, and he's like, the alien will know the truth.
It's like a truth sayer.
And so the alien does its thing. I don't know what it does, but like, and then it's finished, meaning that he was telling the truth, meaning that he is to be believed. In terms of Bodhi, like Bodhi is trustworthy because he's not lying, and yet Saw still doesn't believe him. He's like, it's a trap. I can't believe him. So nothing was changed from having the alien go on him and interrogate him because if it made Saw Gerrera believe him, then we have something. There's a point to the scene, but the entire sequence of the alien interrogating him was pointless because nothing came from it because it started with the same. The conclusion was how it started. It never changed.
I think there are two reasons for that alien. It's a Star Wars movie, so they need a giant, gross alien to play a prominent role in the scene and like wrap its tentacles around somebody, obviously. And second, to like make Saw Gerrera seem more unhinged and intimidating to the audience.
But what's the point of that since he dies 5 minutes later? Like, what's the point?
Bro, I didn't write the fucking movie.
And then I have another problem with Bodhi, and it's after the message was destroyed, and then Cassian's like, Jin, what the message? Do you have the message? She's like, no, everything moves so fast and it was destroyed.
She's like, I ate it.
And then Cassian's like, did you see the message, Bodhi? And Bodhi's like, no. It's like, Bodhi, what are you talking about? Like, Galen gave you this mission.
You didn't look at it?
With the hologram.
You didn't look at it once.
Like, you can't even, why would Galen send you off as a defector with this message if it wasn't something that relates to the Death Star? Wouldn't Bodhi be like, hey, I went through hell and back, was raped by an alien. I think she's telling the truth. Instead, he just shook his head like, bro, I don't know what she's talking about. It's like, dude, you worked with Galen to leave the Empire and get this information to the rebellion. Like, why are you... I didn't understand why he was suddenly like, I don't know anything that she's talking about.
It seems like they were just stuck on this scene.
Exactly.
The sequence of Jin getting to Saw Gerrera, and then her with Bodhi and everybody escaping Gerrera while the Jedda's being blown up, and then Gerrera staying to kill himself.
Yeah.
It seems like they were just stuck on that whole thing, and they're like, all right, how do we get out of there? Here's door number 1. Let's close that. Here's door number 2. That's okay. We can go through there. And they figured it out somehow, but no, I agree. It's a bit up in the air all over the place.
Because they want to set up the next sequence as Jin by herself trying to convince everyone that she's correct. And the whole point was
at the rebels.
Yeah, and they want her to stand alone. That's why suddenly Bodhi has like no. He's like, I don't know what she's talking about. That's why, because like it wouldn't make sense for Bodhi to be like so like uncaring about there being a message. If he was here, this is why he's here.
It's for the audience to, I guess, accept her as the main leader of the rebellion going forward. Because once she sees the message, this is the first time who Jin has spent her entire life resenting her father, not wanting anything to do with her, not wanting anything to do with the rebellion or anything. She just wants to keep her nose down and survive. She finally sees this message from her father, his words speaking to her for the first time in years, finding out that he was a prisoner. Obviously, he didn't want to build a Death Star. He was forced to do it, but he did put some secret vulnerability in the Death Star because of hope. And I think, hope is the main theme of this film, and that hope has changed Jin's character into not only wanting to be part of the rebellion, but become a leader. And that's showcased, obviously, like we were talking about, how she's trying to convince everyone else in the Rebel Alliance to go forward with the plan.
Exactly. So, Jin is my next issue with the film.
All right, let's go over Jin.
This is going to be a big one. Again,
should we go into intermission first?
Let's do intermission.
All right, we'll go into intermission.
Then we're going to go after Jin. Well, I'm going to go
Anthony's going to go after Jin. Don't worry, I'll do my best to protect her, everybody. Protect the precious cargo. All right. Now let's head on into our intermission and begin with the movie quotes competition. I'll go first, Anthony.
Sounds great, James.
I told you, I don't want to join your super secret boy band.
What is this? Oh, shoot. Is this a Marvel movie?
Maybe.
It's Iron Man in Avengers.
It's Iron Man in Iron Man.
Oh, an Iron Man?
To Nick Fury.
Oh, at the end in the post-credits scene. Damn. Got me.
Got him.
Got him. Got him. All right, here's mine. Every time something goes wrong, the world forgets why we fly.
Every time something goes wrong, the world forgets why we fly. Huh. Top Gun.
No.
The Aviator.
No.
Apollo 10.
No. You mean Apollo 13?
No, I mean Apollo 13.
No. The Martian.
Oh,
So it's
man.
Teddy Sanders, the director of NASA, says that.
Played by Jeff Daniels.
Yeah.
Good one. All right.
Directed by Ridley Scott.
Starring by David. Keep going. Cinematography by Stephen Elsevere Street. I just made a person up. All right, guess this movie release year.
Elsevere Street. What the fuck kind of name is that?
It's his name. I didn't. It's not my.
You didn't choose it.
Yeah, he didn't choose it. He was just born with it, man.
Poor guy.
Alan Severe Street. All right, but give him a break. Guess this movie release year. Scarface. Bum, bum,
1981.
wrong. 1983.
Damn
Dun, dun,
We might be doing that soon. Who knows?
dun.
If y'all want a Scarface episode, hit us up in the comments. Okay,
I want one.
guess this movie release year.
Ready?
The Hulk.
The Hulk?
The Help.
That was.
I don't know what happened.
What happened there?
I don't know.
It's like
I don't
the
know.
Halt.
The Help.
The Help.
The Help.
Two tough words.
Very complex words. English is a tough language.
Let's see. 2013.
11.
I was gonna say 11,
But you didn't.
You didn't
You
say
did
it.
not say it.
All right, movie pop quiz time. How do you say help?
Hulk.
The whole. All right, movie release here.
The Hulk.
How many live action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies are there? Live action.
I'm going to go with 5.
3. Just the original 3.
So they don't count the 2 new ones as live action?
They're CGI, bro.
Yeah, but it's a live action movie.
Live action is people on camera.
There are people on camera. That's a live action movie. That qualifies as live action.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm very sure.
Which one?
The Michael Bay ones.
Are those live action?
They're live action. Megan Fox.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Great fact. Great quiz question.
At least I could say help. All right, so that's 4. Nice job.
Thanks, man. Here's my quiz question. What Disney spin-off did Jessica Chastain star in?
Like Disney movie spinoff or
Disney movie spin-off.
Jessica Chastain? It's definitely not Molly's Game.
Ain't no Disney movie. Spin-off of a famous Disney character. Their movie. What is the spin-off?
Oh man, that's a tough question.
I went all Chastain today.
I feel like it's got to be an older movie,
in
right?
honor of her winning. Well, it's not that old. She's not that old of a person.
She's probably like 40.
But I think she's like 38.
It's pretty close to 40.
It's not 40.
It's
How dare you call her 40?
pretty close.
She's probably she might be older than 40. Who knows?
I don't know.
The Huntsman.
Oh,
The Huntsman.
isn't that with Chris Hemsworth?
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah. Emily Blunt.
good one.
Gotcha.
All right,
Got him.
got him. That was a pretty bad intermission.
I don't think we got any right. 0 for 6.
Did I get your quote right?
No.
Oh yeah.
You guessed like 6 movies.
No, I guess like 4.
Did I quit your quote right?
All right,
man.
moving into our haters. We got haters or unsubscribes. Let's
Yeah, we got a couple.
turn this
yeah.
around.
Jit just said you guys seem to have a lot of fun with that. Keep it up, y'all. And subscribed. And then we have, I got a lot of heat for Hot Rod. So Kiefer Ott wrote, Hot Rod is hilarious. You're not funny. Unsubscribed. He's just kidding though. And then Trey Vandell, I can't believe you guys didn't mention grown-ups. Unsubscribed. And then that's it for our unsubscribes today.
All right, we have 2 reviews that I'll bring up. One is a real 1-star review, a real one. This is brand new from Sorry Not Sorry 24. I disagree, not 5-star. Starting with the review of Licorice Pizza, just went on and on about how much they loved it, no real reasons why, and barely discussing the movie. Perspective on horror is so off-key. These dudes liked Malignant, which had to be the funniest horror movie I've ever seen. Yeah, I loved it. and and trash the new Scream. I do not stand by these reviews. All right, I mean, you don't have to agree with us.
Yeah, man, you're welcome to not agree with us.
All right.
We said in our Malignant review, we said multiple times that
That
this
was
is
a terrible
not,
movie.
That it's not a good movie.
Yeah,
and
if you
that-
listen
and
to the review, we
yeah.
said we almost walked out of the theater.
Yeah, we said it was the first half was terrible. We said the acting was horrible. We said it was a unique villain, and then
That made up for it.
and it was a fun time by the third act.
Jeez Louise.
In my Licorice Pizza review, I didn't want to spoil it for anyone because it was a
Spoiler-free.
spoiler-free review. So I don't know what you want me to say in a spoiler-free review.
Sorry, not sorry.
I did
apparently.
I talked about Licorice Pizza for like 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's not that long of a
Yeah.
review. Like what you like. Keep your review out. Keep my review out your goddamn mouth. All right, then we have a 5-star review from Ben Huff 95. It says sometimes they start a podcast, and the titles of the reviews always get cut off by Apple. Sorry, it just says ... Look, it doesn't take a genius to know that every organization thrives when it has 2 leaders. Go ahead, name me a country that doesn't have 2 presidents, a boat that set sail without 2 captains. Where would Catholicism be without the popes? I started listening to these guys in the summer of 2020. That's a great sick reference, bro. Your references are out of control. Everybody knows that. During lockdowns, talking about the best movie villains of all time, Chris Nolan and Tenet, and I was instantly hooked by their love for movies and their humor. FYI, in case you don't know, that's a quote from The Office when Jim and Michael become co-managers,
yeah.
and Oscar goes off on them. On everyone about it. They escalated quickly. They've only gotten better at their craft and are top rate. James and Anthony offer prestige, worldwide entertainment, and insight. Sick reference, bro. It's like they have ESPN or something. Sick reference, bro. I want people to be afraid of how much they love this podcast. Sick reference. If you're interested in great movies and a greater podcast, then don't subscribe. Unsubscribe and join the family.
Thanks,
That's
bro.
more like it.
That was a great rebound.
That's one of the best reviews
all
ever.
the references were
There's like 6 movie and
there
TV
were a lot
references in there.
Great
Wow.
job.
That was great. Ben.
I'm impressed you get all those references in there.
That was awesome.
Well done.
All right. Let's see. On this day in film history, today is April. Unless we have Godfather.
Yes, we do.
Who's our Godfather? Sorry.
Tanner is our Godfather shout out for today.
Tanner, we made you a shot on the Rogue One episode. You're our Godfather, dear patron.
So Tanner's been a fan of our show for a long time, and they requested 2 movies for their Godfather episode. It's Stuart Little 1 and Stuart Little 2. It came out last week, so if you're a Godfather tier patron, you have to listen to our review of those 2 masterpieces. It was a really dramatic and powerful episode.
Well, Tanner specifically requested that we approach them like masterpieces in film, and we went into it. It was great.
In depth.
It was a lot of fun.
It's the 2 biggest Oscar snubs in history.
Probably.
Yeah. But
And,
thank you so much for becoming a patron. Patreon helps us do the show full time, so we appreciate you so much. Thank you, Tanner.
On this day in film history, today is April 4th. In 2003, Phone Booth was released. In 2014, Captain America, The Winter Soldier was released. In 2016, The Jungle Book was released. And we got a lot of birthdays, a lot of late actors and actresses, as well as living still. So happy birthday to the late Anthony Perkins, the late Andrei Tarkovsky, Hugo Weaving, Graham Norton, Robert Downey Jr., Barry Pepper, Natasha Lyonne, and the late Heath Ledger.
Wow, what a list.
I know, right?
That's the most impressive list of talent we've had so far.
Yeah, probably up there for birthdays. Streaming recommendation from me is Argo, which is now on Netflix as of April 1st.
Argo F yourself.
Argo F yourself.
My streaming recommendation is Crazy Heart, which is now on Hulu. Jeff Bridges won a much-deserved Oscar. So Andrei Tarkovsky, the Russian director, he actually died making Stalker because in the cast and crew did as well. They all died very young because it was still heavy with radiation, the zones where they were filming. And they spent so much time filming because they filmed the entire movie, but then when they got back, all the footage, all the film was destroyed by the radiation, so they had to go back and film again.
Really?
Yeah. So
I didn't know that.
So then they started filming and shipping the film out away.
Wow, I
from
wish
the
I
area.
knew that before the last time I watched it. That would have been a trip.
And
because,
so,
the movie feels like it has radiation in it.
Exactly.
Because, I mean, it's obviously one of the main themes of the film.
Yeah. So tragically, him as well as many of the cast and crew died pretty young.
What about the main actors, like
that died very young?
The teacher and
died very young.
The professor,
Yeah.
or whatever, the writer, I mean.
Yeah.
That's
the movie literally killed a lot of them.
It's a masterpiece.
Yeah.
It is.
It's very sad though.
Wow, that's horrible. I did not know that.
Iconic posters in movie history are Star Wars movies, and the best place to get these posters is at movieposters.com, the number one place for posters online. Use our very special promo code Raiders10 to get 10% off your order today. Movieposters.com has an Movieposters.com has an extensive collection of pretty much every movie and TV show in their arsenal, as well as a selection of all sorts of sizes, framing, and backlighting for your poster needs. We also just did a movie poster giveaway contest in our last episode. There's actually a couple days left to enter that contest. So if you want to win a free movie poster from movieposters.com, be sure to head on over to our YouTube channel and make a comment of your favorite Marvel movie in the Nickelodeon episode. That will enter you into the contest. We are announcing the winner on Thursday, so everyone stay tuned for that. And if you don't win, be sure to head on over to movieposters.com for all of your poster needs and use our promo code Raiders10 for 10% off.
All right, let's move back into our episode of Rogue One, a Star Wars story, and Anthony is about to tear apart Jin. Go for it. Jin Erso.
Okay, so Jin, I think she's a great character by the second half of the movie. I think the second half of the movie takes a turn once they go on their mission at the end.
All right, break down for us.
And then she becomes a great character, and the movie gets a lot better. So, and it's nothing to do with Felicity Jones. I think Felicity Jones is an amazing actor. She's one of my favorite actresses working today. But the problem with Jin is the way she's written. And the way she's written is she's written as a passive character. Now, there are two kinds of characters you can write as a lead actor. You can write an active character or a passive character. Now, it's pretty self-explanatory. An active character makes things happen. They move the plot forward with their actions or their decisions or their choices. They're the ones propelling the story. Whereas a passive character, the story happens to them. The plot happens to them. They're kind of just along for the ride. And that's what happened with Jin when the writers made this first half of this film. And you can perfectly contrast her with Rey in The Force Awakens. Now, The Force Awakens, it's not a perfect movie, but it has a really great introduction to Rey, and she has a great first half in the film. Ultimately, that film kind of went a little too over the board when she defeated Kylo Ren in her first ever fight. That was when it just was a little too much, but she was on the right track up until then. Now, Jin is the complete opposite, where she's not as well drawn out or developed as Rey was. So you can compare them as well. It's think about the opening scene with Jin as a kid. That's a great establishment. But I'm talking about grown-up Jin. I'm talking about adult Jin. What's her opening scene? She wakes up in prison, looks at the prisoner next to her lying in bed, and then that's it. And then the next scene is she's rescued from inside that caravan. That's her opening. Don't really know who she is. We just know she's a prisoner. Whereas the opening of Force Awakens, J.J. Abrams, even if you don't like some of his movies or his choices with the Star Wars movies, he is a very intelligent storyteller. He knows how to tell a story. What he does with Rey in the first act of that film, we get 6 straight minutes of Rey, a day in the life.
I love that.
She's scavenging, she's selling, she's cleaning.
She's looking into the sky, wondering who I am.
But then she makes things happen. She saves BB-8 out of the goodness of her heart, so we understand she has a good heart. And then she refuses to sell BB-8, so we see she's a morally good person. We learn so much about her in a matter of a few minutes because of the choices she makes and the actions she encounters and the things she encounters and how she reacts to them. And then also we learn about her family, how she's been waiting for them. A great character has a lie that they believe, which is something they believe to be true, but is a falsity. And now Rey's lie that she believes is she believes that her family's coming back. Tragically, they'll never come back. And so her story is confronting that truth that she believes and discovering that it's a falsehood and overcoming that. Whereas Jin doesn't have a lie that she doesn't believe. She's not driven by anything except for just fighting for fighting's sake. And so right off the bat, you have an example of how to create a character in a matter of a few minutes. Now that opening 6 minutes with Rey, it moves by pretty quickly, but it tells us everything we need to know. Whereas in Rogue One, that same amount of screen time, we get 4 character openings. Boom, 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 back and forth between planets, and you're like overwhelmed. Whereas JJ understood, in order to craft this character and make audiences understand with her and empathize with her, we need to take our time. We need to know who she is. Whereas Rey, we don't really know. Jin, we don't really know who she is, and the passivity extends much further beyond that. So Rey is a passive character in this plot of this film for the entire first half. Jin. I'm sorry. Jin is a passive character for the entire first half. So she's put in handcuffs 7 times in this movie. She just keeps getting captured.
7
times. She's put in cuffs. Captured over and over and over again.
Well, they're handcuffing the character, basically, literally.
Yeah, exactly. So what's happening is, here's all the things that happen to her as a passive character. So first she's in prison. Then she is being escorted. She's rescued by the rebellion. And then she's been captured, and then she's told, okay, you can go on this mission with this crew to find Saw Gerrera, or you can go back to prison. And now this is an example of, like I said earlier, active characters make decisions. This isn't really a decision to make.
Yeah, like obviously she's gonna go to see Saw Gerrera.
You're obviously gonna go. It's not. They're basically forcing her. So
she's nothing to do with her character.
Because if she says no, she's gonna be locked in prison probably for life. So we don't really. She's not really making an active decision. And also in that sequence, like I talked about Rey, we're being shown who she is through action, the things she does. Whereas in this sequence, the general he lists out Jin's entire criminal history. So we learn all the things she's done, which sound awesome, but like we could have seen some of that in her opening. We could have seen how resourceful she is.
Whereas Rey, she's climbing that giant structure in the ships and hoarding him for material and parts.
Exactly. We can see she's a capable person.
She's athletic and creative.
Exactly. Whereas Jin, she's just in a room. So if they didn't show any kind of resourcefulness, capability, skills, she doesn't fire that blaster until they're on that next planet, and that's like an hour into the film, and we don't know anything about what she's capable of. But then they do the exposition, the lazy exposition of, here, I'm going to read off a list of all the things about you to the audience because we don't want to show it to the audience. We're just going to tell the audience because it's faster and it's easier and gets us on to the next scene. So again, she's even a passive character in how the audience perceives who she is and her past. And then what happens next? She goes to Cassian's crew and they fly to that planet to find Saw. And Jeddah, the planet. And then, so the mission is, we got to find Saw Gerrera. What happens? They land, they walk around for a minute, then all of a sudden, a firefight breaks out, not involving them, but involving Saw Gerrera's men and Empire stormtroopers. They're not even involved in this fight, but then they get involved, and then they overcome the soldiers, and then like, oh, great, here are Saw Gerrera's men, let's go to Saw Gerrera. So once again, they're not acting, they're just reacting to what's happening around them. The problem that they needed solved got solved for them. They get involved in the firefight, but it's not like Jin and Cassian were like, did something to find Saw. It just happened in front of them, which is just, again, lazy screenwriting and tying loose ends together to get them to fit, to move the movie along faster. And so, once again, they're captured, rescued, then taken to Saw Gerrera. So, time and time again, Jin and Cassian are just passive characters in the movie. Things are happening to them rather than them making things happen. But it does get better by the time that Jin and Cassian go on that mission, the final mission. She becomes a very active character. And
it's after she sees the hologram of her father.
Then she begins propelling the plot forward. But we're an hour and a half into this movie. And so for an hour and a half, I found her character to be unlikable. And I couldn't really understand who she was or what she wanted. And then by the second half of the film, I liked her a lot more. But I think the weakness of Rogue One is how they wrote Jin.
That's a valid point. No, I think that's a great point. But in terms of passive characters only, there are other films with passive characters that work. I mean, can't you say that Big Lebowski is somewhat of a passive character where things are happening to him, although he does react to the things that happen to him.
Things happen to him, but also vice versa. He's the one who goes to Lebowski about the rug.
Yeah.
He's the one who propels the story from there. He goes on his own.
You're right.
So he's not a passive
something
character.
happens to him, but then he keeps doing. Yeah. So actually, it's back and forth with him.
It's fine for something to happen to your character at the opening of this film. Something happens to Jin, but what I'm saying is, for an hour straight, Jin is being placed in certain situations. She's being confined. She's not moving forward. She's being moved forward by the plot, by other characters. She's not making any choices. The choice to go on the mission as opposed to going to prison is not a choice at all.
So the characters, she was metaphorically handcuffed by the screenwriters.
Exactly my point.
Until she sees her father's hologram, then she becomes a really active character.
Now imagine this opening. So imagine this opening where we see Bodhi, and he is escaping some kind of starship, and because he's a defector, and then he gets captured and put into prison. And guess what? Rumors circulate around the planet, and Jin finds word of this guy who's a pilot who knows about Galen. Then maybe she has a crew of people, or maybe she does it on her own. She breaks into the prison, breaks Bodhi out of prison, becoming an active character, setting the plot forward, and then the Rebel Alliance can encounter them and then try to get her on their mission. Whereas
if she was a rebel.
Exactly.
She's not really a rebel.
I know, but what I'm saying is that's a great way to make her an active character while putting two characters together, making a stronger connection and bond with Bodhi, with the audience, and with Jin, understanding better who Bodhi was, while also having Jin display all of her skills and her abilities and show how strong of a character she is through this great opening. But instead we get an opening of her in a prison cell just sitting there.
I think the problem with so many studios today that they're so obsessed with is origin stories. Even this, you don't think it's an origin story, but it's an origin story. It's a Jin origin story. Yeah. And, when you lay it out like that, then it 100% is a Jin origin story, also a Jin end story. Mm-hmm. But, if we have, like you say, a fully formed Jin at the opening of this movie, it would have been probably a lot more entertaining, maybe less character development to make us, have her to have an emotional impact for us when she passes and she dies at the end of the film, because I think it's very tragic because of the transformation of her and Cassian have gone through so much together.
It's a good third act.
It's a great second half of the film, third act, which is why it's such a tragic moment when they die together. But I think I just really... the origin stories are killing me, where they're putting it in everything. Everything has to be an origin story. Give me a fully formed Jin for the whole movie. That probably would have been a lot cooler. Maybe not a fully formed Jin, maybe like a morally...
An active Jin.
A morally ambiguous active Jin probably would have been better.
And then so you can parallel Jin's decision to go on the mission rather than go to prison. You can parallel that with Rey's decision to find Luke Skywalker to bring BB-8 to him. She makes that decision on her own. She doesn't have to go. She's putting her life at stake. She can stay here and keep living her life, but instead she's like, I want to go on an adventure. And you can't help but feel like, let's go, Rey. This is going to be awesome. She's making the decision, and this decision propels the plot forward.
And you know who else does that?
Who?
Luke Skywalker.
Exactly.
Luke Skywalker's uncle and aunt are killed, and so his decision is to go with Obi-Wan, and I'm going to go bust some skulls and get some revenge, and I want to fight now.
Exactly.
I think you're right.
So that's
Do you think maybe they didn't want it to be too much like those two characters?
Everyone loved Force Awakens when it came out. I think
the main theme of this film is hope, and I think that they're trying to infuse that into everything. Every character's actions and motivations are eventually led by hope, especially Jin is led by hope because her father Galen's motivations and goals are all led by hope. Galen Erso leaving that design flaw in the Death Star that's completely based on hope. There's no guarantee that anyone's going to discover that or anyone's going to find his hologram. He's leaving that message, hoping that maybe one day Jin will see it, maybe hoping one day he'll be reunited with Jin, hoping one day she'll be able to get that to the Alliance, to the Rebels, to get them to use the Death Plan vulnerability to destroy the Death Star, which leads to the battle on Scarif. Because before that, Jin has no hope, so maybe the screenwriters purposely eliminated all hope in her life so that one day in the script, or one point in the script, she gets the hope, and it's very meaningful for her, and that happens when she hears her father's speaking to her in the hologram. Maybe give her the hope earlier on would have been better.
I completely agree. I also think what happened was the writers and filmmakers, they were moving the big pieces and then filling in the holes with the small pieces is what I think is going on with this script. And so they had all the big elements of the big story beats, and then they're going to figure out, okay, how does Rey get from here to here? How does she get from here to here? How does she get from here to here? I think that's what they were doing when writing this.
Jin?
Yeah, Jin. Sorry.
Keep mixing them up.
It's these Star Wars names, man.
One-syllable names is tough. It is tough.
There's a lot. But, I mean, that is ultimately the big weakness and problem I have with the film, because you have an opportunity, and I know a lot of people love Jin, and she becomes a really good character by the third act of the film. She's driving the plot forward. She becomes a leader. But it's the first hour and a half of this movie where I was like, where has all of this been? And she would have been so much better and much more likable, and the plot would have felt more nuanced and geared towards her if she had been like this the whole time. I think it was just a big mistake by the writers.
I think they just wanted their two lead characters to have, well, all their characters to go through transformations. Cassian goes through a transformation as well, where he was basically an assassin or a hitman for the rebellion. That's what he was. And then he's ordered to even take out Jin's father when they're on that planet, when they see the meeting between Krennic and Galen and his men about the Death Star plans, and he refuses to pull the trigger, out of caring for Jin now. So he's going through transformations. Jin's transformed. Even Baze, not so much Sherut, because Sherut is awesome. Sherut is like the closest thing we have to a Jedi in this movie, because that is a con of the movie. There are no Jedi unless you count.
There's no lightsabers, yeah.
No, there's a lightsaber at the end of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Darth Vader.
Yeah, my bad.
But Sherut is basically the closest thing we have to a Jedi, played by Donnie Yen. Really great character. He's blind, but he's one with the Force, and I really like the concept of the Force being like a religious practice around the universe and around the galaxy. And also his partner in crime, Baze, who's like the sickest shooter in the Empire. He doesn't miss a shot, but he doesn't really believe in the Force. So I like the back and forth that they have.
Yeah,
I think those are two great characters in this group of like anti-heroes working together to try to save
band of misfits,
the galaxy.
And also another con I have to this film is that entire sequence going to Galen, because after Jin and them discover the message from Galen, they still continue their mission to find Galen and for Cassian to kill him. Ultimately, he spares him, and then we all know what happens. But I feel like they should have gone straight to the rebellion leaders once they heard the news of this message and saw how important and how at stake the entire galaxy was by this bit of information. I mean, ultimately, I think Galen is kind of like secondary to the information of the Death Star. So I saw it as a con for them even making the entire 25-minute sequence of going to Galen.
Yeah, so Galen, we learned, agreed to work to be the one to place he agreed to work on the Death Star so that he knew he would be the one to be able to place a weakness inside the Death Star. They would have realized they didn't need him anymore at some point, and he had to make himself indispensable. And then the reactor module is any pressurized explosion can destroy the entire Death Star inside that module, which obviously in A New Hope, Luke Skywalker does at the end of the film in his X-Wing, super cool Jedi style, using the Force and everything.
Great moment.
But this movie has... What I really like about this movie is it's a war film, essentially, especially the second half, especially the third act. We have mass destruction, which is obviously terrible, but we've never really seen it on the surface in Star Wars. We'd seen planets be blown up, obviously, in the original trilogy. We even saw that in the prequel trilogy. But to be on the ground of not a planetary explosion, but the Death Star's weapon being used to destroy a city, a massive city, which is Jeddah they destroy, which is like a test. And it's really crazy. It's eerily beautiful when they're watching it from space, the city being blown up. But then they use it again in the third act of the film, which ironically, Krennic gets taken out by his own weapon by Tarkin once he takes control of it. But it's really interesting, I think, and fun to get to see that operating from the ground floor. But I also love, again, the third act when it turns into a war movie. We're on the planet Scarif, and they're trying to get through there. Obviously, they have the ships outside of orbit that can't get in because there's that force field and that crazy clever idea to crash the battleship the destroyers into each other, which fall into, I don't know how that would work, where there's no gravity in space, but they fall down into it.
Don't ask questions.
I'm guessing the velocity,
That's another con.
The trajectory of the velocity was
another con.
It was going in that direction, we could say, just picking here. But I really like how that.
That's my side, bro.
Yeah, I got you. It's not a perfect movie, but I really like that. And I love the ground war. It's pretty epic, and the self-sacrifice that happens in the third act of this film is very moving, where every main character has a moment where they're sacrificing themselves, which is something that they've really never done before, in order to now that they have meaning in their lives, now that they all have hope that they can be a part of something greater than themselves.
I also really like the location of the third act. Palm trees and
beautiful
beaches and clear water. I remember they had a great poster of stormtroopers standing in the clear water right on the shore, and I was like, wow, imagery you've never seen in Star Wars. So I thought they had a really creative concept for this final location, giving us something fresh and new that we had never seen in a Star Wars movie. I think it appealed to a lot of people.
And the great transformation of the characters, Jin and Cassian, I think that's a strength of the film, but also we were talking about how it to come, where it took, maybe they could have done this a little sooner. But they're both very similar. They've both been shaped by the Empire's actions on them since a young age. We all know Jin's story, but even Cassian reveals that he's been fighting since he was 6 years old. So you can assume that probably his family was also murdered by the Empire, just like Jin's mother was. And then Cassian's been fighting while Jin's been hiding until they're both now fighting together. And they're just a great team.
They're a great team.
And we also have an R2-D2 and C3PO cameo, which is great. We have TIE fighters, X-Wings. We have everything in this ending battle. It's great.
Everything you want is Star Wars.
Sick.
Yeah, it is very
sick.
good.
20 minutes.
Yeah, it's sick, brah. It's sick, brah. There is a couple more things.
Let's go.
So Jin's speech, I thought it was a very good speech, but I just felt that every other member of the rebellion had just given up and they all wanted to surrender. I just found that strange. Like, nobody else wants to, like, fight, and they're all just like, Jin, we can't do it. Like, that was something where I was like, I'm not sure if I totally believe, like, all the effort and work and decades of growth, literally decades of this rebellion, and now they're just like, no, we gotta give up, and we gotta resolve, and we gotta give in to the Empire. I found that just to be a little strange. Like, I understand they want to show Jin as being an inspiring figure, but it doesn't mean that everybody in the rebellion has to be like, no, you're wrong, Jin. I found that a little out of place myself.
In A New Hope, Luke doesn't really give a speech, right? He's just kind of just like...
He's just another guy.
He's just another guy until he destroys the Death Star.
Yeah, they all are like, oh, we got this. We got the plans.
They're all like hyped. They're all hyped.
Yeah, they hype themselves up. And also, it was kind of out of place how, like, you talk about Jin being so hopeful after seeing her father's message. I understand that, but, like, it's like 2 minutes ago, she found out that the Rebel Alliance planned to kill her father and that Cassian nearly killed her father. And now she's like, we're a team. We got this. And I felt like it was just like a switch on a dime.
Well, there are multiple characters that have that switch
on a dime.
Not just Jin, but also how we were talking about Saw Gerrera. Switch on the dime.
Yeah,
like, now I want to let myself die.
Yeah.
That is, like you said, it's kind of just like easy screenwriting.
Yeah. So there were a lot of, like, character changes and behavior that were just, like, so sharp, because it's fine for her to change, but, like, to change from one scene to the next in a completely different perspective, I found that just to be, like, a little, like, I mean, this is moving way too fast.
Because even, like, if, like, realistically, you say you're in Jin's shoes and you spent 20 years or so, hiding and not wanting anything to do with your father, then you find out that he was a good guy the whole time, even though he helped build the Death Star, but he left this vulnerability, and he's telling it to you in a hologram. I guess maybe for me it would probably take a little time to process, not just like 10 minutes later.
Yeah, exactly.
Possibly.
I think just the script moved very quickly at times, and it was difficult to process and didn't make sense for characters because they should be taking their time with transformations, I think.
It's Star Wars Disney movie, playa.
Hey, we're on a debate.
I know, I'm
we're
just
in
saying.
A debate.
I'm just saying. Well, it's not like a heated debate.
I'm heated.
I like the Death Star because, like, just like the ships, it's CGI rendering pretty much based off replica or scale size models, which is really interesting. The details are incredible. We have some great shots of it, especially like out the window, like with Krennic and Tarkin. Like you can see the Death Star out the window. It's really cool.
You can tell they use a lot of the LED screens in this film as well.
And I like how we just got a tease of the Death Star. It made sense to not have it blow up a planet yet, just make it blowing up cities, because in A New Hope, I believe Tarkin says something like, I think it's time to show the full power of the station. I think that's in A New Hope, where like now we can finally see what the Death Star really can do.
Fully operational.
It's fully operational. Yeah. Let's blow up Leia's planet, and it's going to be terrible.
Alderaan. Is it Alderaan?
Alderaan?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm Ron Burgundy?
I'm Ron Burgundy. It could have been really easy for a screenwriter to get carried away and be like, let's blow some planets up. But I think it's better to just blow up some cities, which is horrible. Horrible thing to do, like Jeddah blowing Jeddah up.
So you're approving the blowing up of cities?
I'm not approving of it. I'm just saying it's better than planets.
Man, choose your words wisely.
But I think it's better they just teased it rather than, getting carried away.
Yeah. The development of the entire station.
I also really like the concept of Jeddah, the city, and how the crystals are connected there because the Galactic Empire is occupied on this moon and under the control of Kyber crystal, which was once used by the Jedi Order as components for their lightsabers. And Jin is connected to this in a way. I think it's their way of connecting her to the Force is with her necklace, which has a Kyber crystal on it. And, it's something that's always been meaningful to her. And so I like that concept of the Jedi on Jeddah, on this planet with the Kyber crystals, but then unfortunately it does get blown up by the Death Star.
And also, the Empire uses the same weapon as the Jedi, if you look at it that way.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
That's really ironic.
Yeah, I think that there's a really smart way of portraying the connection
Really good
of
stuff.
opposite sides.
Really good stuff. Because the Kyber crystal is what powers the Death Star.
Exactly. Now, Krennic, he does have a great part to play in trying to stop them, and he gets very close to stopping them. And then we get like the cliche ending of the villain finally catches the good guy.
Any monologues?
So Krennic catches Jin right as she's literally about to put the hard drive into the antenna, and he's holding her at gunpoint, and then he just goes on a monologue, and then Cassian shoots him from behind, and I was like, how many times have we seen this in movies?
Yeah.
Are we gonna see it
It's
again?
like the kid with the inhaler.
Yeah, the kid with the inhaler. It's like, oh my god, did they just? I watched it for the first time, and I rolled my eyes. I was like, it was just getting good. Like, come on, guys.
It's fine in Die Hard. It's like, if you're gonna shoot somebody, don't just talk about it. Do it. Thanks for the advice. But I mean, you're right. You're right. There's nothing to combat that.
Yeah.
You can't come back.
I was like, come on, it was getting good.
I got you. Now, hold on. I got some things to get off my chest.
I want to talk.
I know there's a war raging.
You've had way too much screen time.
You hold on to the hard drive. Wait another minute.
I have a voice, and you're gonna hear me, Jin Urso.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
It's valid.
And I mean, I know I know a lot of people love this movie. I understand, and I can see why you love it. And I'm not saying you shouldn't like this movie. That's not what I'm saying. This is just like, for me, I like to hold the Star Wars at a high standard because I think Star Wars is one of the greatest properties ever made in film.
But in terms of holding it to a high standard, can you say that since Disney bought it?
Not really, no.
That's the point. I think overall is like, can you be too critical of these movies because of what they are? Not that they aren't still cool, but they're not obviously what the original the original trilogy was.
Yeah, I mean,
the mythos has been diluted, the characters have been diluted, the storylines have been done over and over again, just like any mega franchise.
but this was before it was overdone. This was only 2017,
2016.
2016,
Get
so
your
it's
facts right.
still a while ago. It was only Force Awakens had come out.
True.
So it was before all the TV shows. It was before all it was before all this saturation of Star Wars content. So I think it's still okay to hold it to a high standard.
But there are some other things that I do like. I like the concept of the politics and the tyranny. You get the 1984 feel, especially when they're on Jeddah on the ground, where you can see with the citizens, they're under stormtrooper control. It's like the party in 1984. You have to help them find these villains that are on the run and stuff like that. I really like how stormtroopers actually hit their targets in this movie. I do not like. I wish there was a Jedi in here somewhere, but again, Chirrut is the closest thing. I like the dark and gritty nature of it. Again, cinematography is fantastic. Again, we want more Vader. I do like the concept of the Force here being projected as more of like a religion around the galaxy. It's really cool. I love the Force. I also really love the callback to Yavin 4. We get to go back there. Remember, this is in A New Hope. This is the base of the rebellion, basically, in Star Wars A New Hope. That's where the celebration at the end was. That's there, so it's really cool to be there again.
It's the base that Vader questions Leia about in the first movie.
Yeah, so I like going back there. So there's a lot of cool callbacks to A New Hope because I think they were trying to connect to that movie most of all.
And, the Vader scene at the end is just amazing. It's the best part of the film, and it was just so well done. It's one of the best action sequences ever done in Star Wars history.
And maybe, I agree. Darth Vader going God mode is incredible. This is something we always have wanted. Darth Vader at the height of his powers. What would it really look like with modern filmmaking, with modern practicality, modern effects? And man, they did not disappoint. It is one of the most epic science fiction scenes of all time.
So my question, watching Vader watch Leia's ship get away, I mean, I understand that Vader wants to question Leia about the location of the base. That's what they do in the opening of A New Hope. But it just doesn't seem like to make too much sense to let her get away and not just blow up the ship as it's flying away.
Well, she's also a political power pawn.
Yeah, but she has the information about the Death Star that he killed all those guys for.
Yeah, well, freaking Star Wars, man. Chill the F out. Can't just blow Princess Leia up. She's a princess. Maybe he has a crush on her. Maybe
His own daughter.
Maybe because he
knows
feels
this is.
maybe he feels the Force in her and he's connected to her. He's like, I can't just blow her up. I don't know what's going through his head. He could just Force pull one of the.
You know,
Forces.
Anakin, he's bipolar.
I think it's because she's a political pawn and he wants to know the information that she knows. I think he just wants more information.
Good point.
Information, knowledge is power, especially in the Empire.
He likes information.
He does like info.
Yeah.
You got anything else to say?
No, I'm done.
You done?
I hope no one hates me.
Well, I
now.
like this movie.
I think it's a pretty.
I
good
know
movie.
a lot of people like it.
Yeah.
I know it's a divisive movie. I would say. I think you either love or hate it.
Yeah.
That wraps our episode on Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Really hope you enjoyed this one and take care. Thanks for tuning in around the world. Become a patron at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost Podcast. Don't forget you get access to our Discord for the $10 and $25 tier patrons. Watch parties are coming soon. We're doing Shrek very soon. It was the #1 voted movie to watch, and it's been so much fun. Take care. Have a great day.
May the Force be with you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Raiders of the Lost Podcast. Be sure to subscribe if you're new. Hit the like button, leave a comment. Find us on all audio streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find us. Find us on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Raiders of the Lost Podcast. Be sure to check out one of these other videos right here for more content on our favorite films and breaking down all kinds of movie content. Thanks so much.